welcome. We are super excited today. This is a part of our Discover monthly chat series, and we are super excited to uh, present and have the folks from Daylight Basement um, take over and present, just their concepts, their journey of video game design. Just so you know, on the Discover side, why we do this monthly series is to constantly expose the network and the young people and educators to cutting edge technology, innovation in game design, VR, AR, and just and have people be exposed to the careers out there as well. So it's a mixture of workshops, kind of chats, presentations about cutting edge tech. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to pass it on to the folks at Daylight Basement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll just go ahead and share our screen. Great.
And just a heads up, there is a share audio checkbox if you didn't hit that.
Yes. I think we got it. So hopefully we'll be able to test that soon enough and see if it
make sure the music plays.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for everyone for attending. Like the introduction Jeff had, we're a Daily Basement Studio. We're an indie game dev company, and we're here to kind of just chat about our journey and our experience and perspective through game dev. The team, so on the agenda today, we're gonna kind of talk about us, what exactly is indie, and then kind of go through the pipeline of what it is creating a game and kind of the more important aspects of it, and I'd say bigger learnings we had from our journey. I think there's a lot more, and like any one of these topics, we could probably just do a deep dive, like one of these sessions on just a single topic, but we'll try to go and do like a breadth of info dump for you all. Hopefully it's not too much. This is our team. It's pretty small, just 4 of us. And we didn't necessarily start our careers in the game industry and game dev industry. I myself, I am a software engineer. I went to undergrad for computer science, and then I got my master's in computer science and specifically artificial intelligence, machine learning, interactive systems. And then I went into like the DoD, I went into healthcare, I even did stuff in agriculture, tech. So I've kind of been all over the place, and I at some point really wanted to get back to being more creative and more in line with art, and so then I decided to jump on to being a game dev part-time. And then this is April.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm April, and I'm actually trained as a school psychologist, so I've worked with students in the public school system here. We're based out of Massachusetts, so yeah, I've worked with kids from like preschool aged all the way to through high school and even a little bit after high school. So I've been helping with the game studio for a few years now, and kind of took the leap to doing that full time with them, and still getting involved with schools whenever I can, and doing work with youth, like volunteering and things like that. So it's been a great transition so far.
And last but not least, we have Garrett on the call. Do you want to introduce yourself, Garrett?
Yeah, hi. I'm Garrett, a composer for the last like 10-ish years professionally. And I've kind of bopped around from a bunch of different things. Originally started more in like the advertising adjacent world, and did some stuff with like local musicians for recording and production. And then basically just before the pandemic kind of got into the tabletop world, making music for that. and then throughout the pandemic explored more making music for video games, and eventually met the rest of the team at a convention. We all realized we were from the same area, which is not always super common at conventions. So that was really cool. And basically been working on the project ever since. And yeah, my usual strengths are more in the world of like real instruments and less of the like synthesized stuff. So I really like arranging and orchestrating and playing like folk instruments and things like that. And kind of combining all those different ideas was a really fun thing to do with this project. And yeah, that's pretty much my shtick.
Yeah. Then the last one that's not here, he's Mike. I met him at one of my during my software development journey, and both of us kind of shared hobby interest at the time of doing game dev, and we shared our projects, and we kind of talked about how we never actually finished any of these like end to end to fully into production. So this is kind of the result of that conversation, is us taking that leap into starting our journey into game dev. So this is the game that we're working on. It's a twin stick bullet hell shooter, and I'll go ahead and just play the trailer for you all to view. Yeah, so that's the game we're working on. So I would say I call it like a love letter to the games that we grew up with. It's kind of got this retro pixel art vibe to games that I fell in love with when I first started gaming, but kind of a bit more of a modern feel to it. And oops. So before we get into kind of the main part of our talk, I do want to say if anyone has any questions at any point in time, feel free to throw it in the chat. And if I see it, we can react to it. If Garrett or April see it, we can definitely engage in some sort of discussion and stuff like that. So I already see a comment that you guys have seen this game online. So that's really cool. That's neat to see that. Yeah. Yeah, Contra for sure. I love that. Appreciate that comment. So we all probably know what is indie development, but we're gonna probably just like level set and maybe call out some stuff that isn't super obvious. I bet most of it is though to everyone though. I think first of all, Garrett has used this term in the past, and it's called scrappy, and that's kind of how it feels, where we kind of all wear a lot of different hats while we go into the game development world, especially in the indie game development world. And we're independent from major publishing companies. Sometimes game devs or game studios themselves will independently publish a game, and it doesn't feel very indie because they still have millions of dollars of investments and backing and things like that. But I think the con circuit that we do and the game dev communities that we're a part of and we talk to, it's like a lot of people self-funding and trying to kind of bring their project and their creativity to life. And so that's kind of the view that I have of indie or independent. Like I said, we do wear a bunch of hats. April, a school psychologist, we brought on, and she's been super helpful with things that originally she was helping with like social media and like the community stuff, and then I think you found a new place in helping like with player feedback and even like helping revamp our tutorial and player engagement like that way. So it's like we all kind of come in maybe with a single purpose, and then we find out, the ship has a lot of stuff, a lot of stations to fill. So everyone kind of takes up their part to be a part of it. I think the obvious is, I said it before, we have to find funding our own way, and a lot of the process we have to figure out ourselves. I think one nice thing, if you could hook up with like a larger publishing studio, is like they just kind of know steps 1 through 6, where steps 1 through 6 for us is us really trying to figure out a lot of it and experiment and make our educated guesses. So what's good about that? I think the obvious is we get to own the creative process, and we got to take kind of creative leaps, where I think a company that's investing potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars into you and it makes sense. They want to make sure they get a good return on investment, and we're a little bit more willing to take risks compared to them. Compared to AAA as well. And I think this is like a huge strength of our studio. We're able to engage the community more frequently in a more personal way. So if you like hop on our Discord, you'll see that we're chatting with people that we've met like years ago at cons, and like they've been following us. So it's like really cool, because then they'll bring in their friends and we'll just start chatting with them, and even somewhat they've become our friends as well, which is really nice. And then the final point I think that's most important is, and it kind of goes along with maybe even the funding and that like return on investment point I was making earlier, is we can be way more adaptive. So as we're engaging with the community and talking with them, we can figure out what they like and kind of emphasize on that more. And we can figure out what they don't like, and we can kind of bring that and reel that back in and kind of mix that feedback in with our creative vision and try to make a better game out of it, where other major studios tend to make a major investment and then like that's the way that they're going, and it can be really, really hard to direct that ship. So what's kind of difficult about it? The title of this column is UFTA, which is Midwest American slang for man, that this is really hard. But the budget and in terms of resources and time and skill can be like really difficult. We can be spread thin a lot of times, especially if we have like a certain deadline to meet with like Xbox, or we said we're going to make a release update or something like that. It can be very difficult for us to all kind of get hands on deck and to release something. So it's just, we have to be way more mindful about like our runway and what exactly we are capable of, just the 4 of us. So
I just wanted to kind of, I'd also bounce off that to say that the a lot of the like other, or just in general, the indie teams that I've worked with, one of the biggest problems that a lot of teams have is just that like self-starter mentality, like knowing that they're the ones who have to get the thing done, and a lot of teams can just drop off or dissolve because they either don't have the budget time or skills, or just the general kind of like go get them kind of attitude to finish the thing. So yeah, I do think that when you go the independent route, and this is true even of just me being a freelancer, not working for like a composition company or anything like that, but just it is a lot of dedicating your own time to like making sure you're going and doing the thing like every day, or every couple days or whatever, and staying on top of it, because it could easily deteriorate if you're not the one like kind of forcing yourself to be on top of it. But yeah.
I think just to that point, I think you guys all work with students or mentor students that, if you have someone that's loves kind of wearing different hats and trying different things, this is a very good place for them, that they can express a lot, and it's really cool. And hopefully we can show that during some of these slides. Okay, so, oh, I think we have a question, maybe. I don't know if I think I saw a hand raised.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Sí, quería saber primero si está la alternativa perdón que interrumpa, pero es la alternativa si está de la traducción, porque así no de traducción en Zoom, en español, de inglés a español, más que nada porque como que me pierdo por momentos no sé si Gustavo, no sé si se sabe si hay una forma de hacer la traducción.
Creo que se está grabando ahorita también la sesión, Stephanie. Entonces no sé si
Sí.
ya siendo grabada sería más fácil. No sé qué estés usando para hacer la
Ok.
transmisión, pero
Sí, porque la verdad que están mencionando un montón de cosas re interesantes y es como que, ay, me pierdo por momentos. Entiendo un poquito, pero pues me pierdo el hilo del párrafo.
okay. Matt, do you know if this is being recorded right now, right? And it's like there's going to be a transcript and AI thing that will do that. She was asking me about the translation because I don't know if she's using a software, but she's like I'm getting confused with like things. But I told her that it's being recorded, and then possibly afterwards she might be able to review the session that way. I think you're
Yeah,
muted.
that's being recorded.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Ok,
The
bueno,
Sí, se está
transcript,
grabando, dice que va a haber un transcript y con eso creo que lo vas a poder como ver de nuevo y que te lo ponga en español. Creo que lo más fácil.
ok, listo. Gracias, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about the first part of our pipeline, and that's actually just like kind of designing the game, like the thing that we want to do. That's always a good place to start. So the obvious part is like the game itself. Some questions that we like to ask ourselves is like, what do we want the player to experience? Do we want them to feel like John Wick? Do we want a thoughtful, sort of reflective experience that maybe they think about something politically or they think about something personal to them? There's a lot of different ways to convey that. And so hopefully the following topics that we talk about, we can show how we try to convey that. But at first, we're just thinking about like feeling and experience. What exactly do we want the player to experience while they're performing the game actions? And then to pair with that, it's like, how do you make that fun? Fun is, again, a subjective thing. There's a lot of games out there that people you hear the description and people are like, oh, that's just not for me. But other people are like, that I want more of that. And I think that there can be like some really creative ways to explore it. The one game I've talked to this team about a ton is Papers, Please. They call themselves a dystopian document thriller or something like that. And all you do is just like approve and reject papers. You're just like a person that approves boarding passes basically, and passports. But I think like the core of the gameplay and like the message that comes across from it can be like really powerful and engaging to players. So it's something that you can take anything ordinary, and I think you can make have a lot of fun with it. And then do we have a question? Oh yeah, Papers, Please. I love that game so much. I think one other point to make on the experience part is like, again, this is like a obvious, maybe an obvious point, but yeah, I've heard Garrett quote someone else, so I'm going to quote Garrett quoting someone else, where like video games are the art of agency. So you're really thinking about the player of like, not only am I going to be providing visual or sound stimulus to the player, but like, how does that interact with the choices that that player can make during the process? And I think that is actually a really exciting art form to explore and can provide a really meaningful and impact to players in the community. The next part that we try to pair with the game design is then the art design. And it's like, how exactly do we want to communicate that to the player? Again, this can be different visuals, sound effects, feedback mechanisms, things that yeah, we can really kind of push the boundaries on or kind of be more reserved on. And then how do we reinforce that design language and ideas? And so that could be using similar themes throughout the game itself, the narrative design, and maybe present them in slightly different ways to kind of help the player along, which is really cool. And then the last part that we've been, I think, focusing a lot more nowadays is accessibility, where everyone kind of deserves to have fun. And while we're being a small team, we can't necessarily do everything. And that's one sober realization that we have. It's just like, how can we maximize our effort as a small team? And who do we think is missing from having fun with our game? And so how do you balance that with not necessarily ruining the experience or things like that, which I think there's a lot of great ways to do it and a lot of great ways to include more players in your base. So traditionally I'm a computer science engineer. And so I do all the in-game art for RBA. So when I transitioned to being a part-time artist for the game, I kind of developed my own process and pipeline, and I don't know if it's necessarily like, you know, those who've practiced and studied art, if it's like the correct way to do it, but I'm going to show a way to go ahead and see, yeah, and just share my perspective on that.
Looks like we're changing maybe the subtitles to be in Spanish. So I just wanted to make sure before we keep going.
Yeah, they changed already. You guys are good.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I just didn't want to keep going if it wasn't set yet.
So when setting out to kind of figure out the game visuals for RBA, we selected a couple different themes, visual themes, or like design themes that I think spoke to us pretty broadly and had an impact. We kind of selected 3 different words: postmodernism, pixel art, and retro were the themes that we had. And then you can kind of see on the right side are the colors that represent what those things in the game would be. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that process of like how we got here at the end. And you'll see a lot of this stuff like recur, which I think is like really cool to show off. So I think a really important part of my process is finding references and inspirations. I do not like recreating the wheel, and drawing inspiration from like the natural environment or other artists is a huge part of my process. So I dug up in our Discord, and this is like from years ago, like the exact images that we were sharing at the time, where we found some like really cool references that kind of had that postmodernism. It's like a retro futurism sort of feel, like think like furniture from like the 70s or the 60s, kind of how everything was like curved and had these like browns and reds, and the kitchen appliances were like that teal blue almost. So we found some really cool references that I think kind of fit that theme, and that future sort of retroism. Fallout, I think, is like probably the biggest example of like how they demonstrated future retroism. Everyone kind of thinks of that game. If anyone can name this emblem, where this emblem comes from, I'd be impressed. But this is actually from the Soviet Union and their space program. So we kind of have like a space theme going on too, that kind of helps reinforce certain like imagination, kid-like wonder within the game. But yeah. In the back is some IBM mainframe computers here. So yeah, we tried to also just like cover also technology in the inspiration too, and just like not just think about like the color palette and popular ads and things like that, but just like actually like what was being used during the time frame. So once we kind of got those references together, I was able to actually come just with a very, very simple color palette of the primary colors of this kind of like tealish green and this more kind of like harsh red that's just like, complements this green, and then figuring out what the background looks like. And so I stuck that on just an image like this, and this was the first start of RBA was this image. So
RBA is Rightfully Beary Arms.
Yeah, thank you.
The game that
Yeah.
we're helping.
So yeah, so this green block was going to be our hero and protagonist. This red block was going to be enemies and bad things that would do damage to the player, and the yellow would be some background that the player would have wouldn't want to really pay too much attention to, and then the orange would be things that the player kind of runs into in blocks and things like that, so it would block the player. And I wanted to keep these color themes like really strong throughout the game, so that I don't know if you noticed during our trailer, but it's a bullet hell game, so there's a lot of stuff going on at the screen at one time. The player's thinking about dodging bullets, where they're going to go next, like should I reload, should I dash over here, I've got this on cooldown, I've got to figure this out. So like what I wanted to do was just like reinforce, like take the cognitive load off the player, and just like these are the things that are on screen that you should be familiar with. And so yeah, this is how RBA started. Then that mock-up turned into this mock-up, which then led into like our actual character designs. And so I'm going to talk about like the actual character designs process that I have. See something in chat. Yeah, I think it's really, I love color palette kind of thought and process with the design, Jeff. I think it can help with accessibility. I think it can help with so much aspects of the game, like just like game design and stuff like that. So that's why I put a lot of thought into it. So yeah, character references, again, like I feel like I'm not necessarily a traditional artist, but I like to draw things. I feel like in my engineer mind, I draw things in layers, and I draw them as independent parts, because I don't know traditional animation. And so I'm also very, very lazy. So I try to do this in the most cost-effective way possible for me. So this is one of our characters that I'm going to be showing the process of building out. It's called, she's a boss called Battery, and she's literally a bat with tree wings. We have a lot of puns and kind of play on words in our game. So I'll build first like the face, and then I'll attach some ears, and like keep in mind that these are all like independent pieces, that they're their own art pieces as I'm adding them together. Then we'll add the facial features. I like to do big, memorable like eyes or a mouth in this case, that it kind of stands out to the player of like, oh yeah, this is traditional Battery, the boss. Add a little nose, because that's really cute to add. So then go on to the body, and the body is very, again, like I'm very, very lazy and simple. So like all I did was I just stuck a circle on it that's a little bit darker for the purple. And I was like, all right, let's just see how it goes, and added the wings to it. And I was like, you know what? The stomach can just stay a circle, because when it's moving on screen and stuff like that, I don't think the player is going to even notice that much. And again, I'm doing like coding and art for the project, so anywhere I can kind of streamline and make the pipeline more efficient, I try to do that. So I got this like basic character render of battery, which again, is a play on the word battery. Once I have each individual piece inside an art program, I can then just basically go through and edit each piece and translate and transform each piece. So I'm not really doing animation per se and like drawing each frame. I usually take each frame and I'm like manipulating the other drawn frames to either rotate them up or rotate them down. And I think you get like really, really effective, cost efficient animation cycles with that. So on the left side, you can see those are all layers that I drew up independently, and then you kind of stick together. And then along the top, the 1, 2, 3, those are the frames that show the animation cycle. So this is a sprite. I can put this in the chat, actually, a sprite. So this is really, really good for pixel art animation. It's designed for pixel animation. It's very simple, and straightforward. If you use something like Photoshop, you can totally use this. I also like that the fact that the whole program itself is designed as pixel art, so it kind of gives inspiration in itself, which is really neat. Love it. Cool. So if you go to the next slide, yeah, so then we can see it all together. And then this is Beary, the main character, fighting Battery, and she spawns battery minions in itself. So we have a lot of puns going on with it. And again, the animations I think are very simple and straightforward, but I think they are very effective for like how much work I've actually put into them compared to like other processes that I've viewed and studied. So yeah. Again, on character designs, one other step I take to make sure, and this is kind of going back to the color palette design. Again, on screen, there's like a lot of different there's a lot of actions going on. Again, there's like bullets going on, the player is thinking about different things. So being able to quickly identify enemies and threats kind of subconsciously was really important, because each enemy character does its own unique attack or may have some unique effect or output into the world. So I take whatever sprite I have and I put it basically, and I mask it and I make it white, and I put it on a black background. And the idea is you should kind of quickly be able to glance at the silhouette, and I should be able to tell what character that is compared to other characters. And so between the animations and kind of the goofy like objects and shapes that I have, I think it's been pretty effective for players and kind of lowering the cognitive load again for them. This is a trick I picked up from Valve and Dota 2. This is like part of their design process. So something that I took on for RBA. I think it was important. Yeah, but I think that's it for the art part. Are there any questions that we can take now for that?
What do you mean by more cost-effective animations?
Yeah, so again, it's usually for me, resources or time constraint. I work full-time as an engineer and I'm doing this part-time. So cost-effective in that sense is me being able to put in a minimum amount of time or a reasonable amount of time to create a new art object, and then from that art object, then I import it and then I have to code it and things like that. So if I can reduce part of the art pipeline and then reduce the coding pipeline, that can have a huge impact on my work pipeline, my work time. Cool. Yeah, and I think if that's it, then yeah, we're gonna go over to music with Garrett.
Yeah, feel free to, there you go, pop the next slide. I'll have to like dictate to you when to hit the slides.
Sure.
But yeah, so basically, like I mentioned, I come from a bunch of different music worlds, and all of them have different responsibilities. And I think the thing that's kind of interesting about scoring for an indie game is similar to everything that Chris is talking about, which is like, the whole like time is money kind of thing, being adaptable, being reactive, and then also being this is true of like all the music worlds, being extremely thoughtful. You can't just uh hold on one second. I'm doing the confirm your language thing. Um, yeah, you can't just make assumptions about a project, or what it's trying to be. You kind of have to be really really thoughtful and forward thinking in order to make something that is representative and good at the end of the day. Um, but yeah, so the soundtrack at the end of the day should help support the identity of the project. And basically, what I mean by that is you look at all the stuff, all the thought that Chris has put into this, and everyone else on the team too, but just in terms of like the artwork and what you were talking about, it has a lot of identity and character, and I should be there to like, I should show up and support that. I shouldn't like kind of put my own spin on it. Like, yes, I like people would want me to put my own spin on it as a contractor, but I shouldn't come in with that being my first like goal is to like, how can I do this my way? I should kind of humble myself and say, well, this project really knows what it is first and foremost. I'm supposed to come in and like make sure that what I create is my voice, but in support of that. Um, and my little side note is that it's really hard to do that if the project that you're working on doesn't have a strong identity. So if you're like a solo dev and you're like starting out like making the game design and the artwork and the music, you might find out that by the time you get to the music, you'll be like, I don't even know what this is. And then it gets really hard to keep like creating more content for your project. So make sure you're starting out from the get-go, like knowing exactly what you want to make and why, because that'll just make it so much easier as you get to those later steps. Um, and so beyond just kind of the like general approach, getting into the more like specifics of how I actually go through and write each track, I really want to think about how can it kind of like what Chris was saying, how can I like make something that's as effective as possible in such a streamlined way? It's art is like an interesting thing where I really do like to kind of just, you know, go out into an open field and sit with my thoughts and go, I got it now. But also like you do need to work on a schedule and say, let me like think about like keywords, mood boards, all those kinds of things to make it so I have a method for getting to the aha moments. And for me, I start at the simplest core of the musical idea. And I'll try to stay away from like, annoying music terms, but more just kind of broad concepts that can kind of make sense depending on where you are in your musical journey. But like the core of a song for me will just be basically the melody, and maybe like the chords to go with it or something. But it doesn't matter what instrument it's on. It doesn't really matter the speed necessarily. I just want to get something that like Chris's effect of getting those silhouettes and knowing exactly what a character is, you should be able to hear just the littlest bit of a melody and go, oh, I know exactly what this is, and it has a type of feel to it just by the like smallest core of it. And then the next step that I take from there is I take that core and then I try to say, okay, how can I arrange this to be in the character of the project? And that's kind of like, listening to like cover songs by different bands, like maybe this grunge band covered a folk tune and like, being able to take that core that is pretty, transcendent, but putting in all these different contexts to give it a whole new life that is specific to that band or maybe what that band is there to support. It's like the other thing that comes to mind is every time you see a trailer and they play like the Mario theme, but with like big Hans Zimmer brass, like, yeah, it's doing this different thing to the core of the music, but putting it in the context that they want it to be in for the project. So for something like this, it's trying to figure out how do I take that melody that I've written and make it sound like it should be accompanying this artwork and the way the game feels and the pace that it's at and all this kind of stuff. And those things, like I can basically take any melody and arrange it to be in that world. But kind of separating those two concepts of what is my core and what is my like arrangement that it's in, that's kind of a helpful way to break down the steps so that you're kind of checking yourself every step of the way, making sure that you're fully in service of, making something that's going to be good for the project. And just to make sure I'm kind of clear about what I mean by arrangement, that's just in terms of instruments being used, like effects being used. If you're like putting voices on it, what are you doing to those voices? You're if it's going to be a really big arrangement, really small arrangement, different things like that. It's more so about the instruments and the kind of genre, I guess is the other word that might come into play. And then the last step that is pretty specific to making music for a video game is figuring out how the music's going to function in the game at the moment. So far the music that we've played is just like the title theme of uh, the game, and that's just played on the menu, and then everything else kind of comes after that. But it might be something where we have a loop throughout a background of the game. It might be something where the music is reactive to things that the player is doing. Like one of my favorite examples of something like that is if anyone's ever played Untitled Goose Game, and you basically just like walk around as a little goose and wreak havoc, and the more havoc you wreak, the more music like enters. Um, but yeah, I was just gonna read the chat real quick. Yeah, it's the identity of a project is like I said, if the project doesn't have that, it's almost helpful to then take a step back and work with the developers and say, what are you trying to do here? Because if they can't give you a good answer, then maybe, I mean, if you have the ability to step off, then maybe do that, or just help them if you really believe in it in some other way. Yeah, it really uh, it's such a like important part of the process, because it's another reason why a lot of like teams fall apart, is because they realize at a certain point they don't really know what they're trying to do. They're just kind of making something because they know they have the tools to make it. And then once it gets to the point where they finally made the thing and it doesn't hit in the way they want it to, they're like, well, what did we do wrong? It's because they didn't really think about what it was, like the core of the thing that they're trying to do. Yeah, any questions so far on that first slide? Cool. And Chris, if you want to hop over to the next one. So looking at the core of the music, and this is specifically about, our project, and what I did for that. Uh, Literally what I'll end up doing on like 90% of the projects I work on is I'll almost kind of do that thing where I make like a mood board, I write a bunch of words down, and then I kind of sit and think, and I'm like, okay, if I were to hear this melody just pop in my head, what does it sound like? And I think the only way I can really get there is if I start with this kind of calculated mood board process. So for this game, either talking to the devs or just by myself, I wrote down all these keywords. These might be completely incorrect. Or they might be right. I just kind of was writing them down as I was thinking of them. But childlike, mischief, energetic, motivated, nostalgic, anthemic, and ironically full of attitude. I feel like those all kind of that was the impression I was getting as I was looking at a lot of the artwork and the gameplay. And for what it's worth, also what was really great about this project is Chris had sent me pretty much the same slides that he showed today. Not to call out that you're reusing content, but yeah, and that was really helpful because it not only did it show that the team was caring about these things, but also it showed where they were caring about the things, and that's kind of what keyed in these words that I chose. Um, and Yeah, I think the general vibe that I was getting is kind of somewhere in between all those words. Like it hits all those points, but it ends up feeling like this kind of uh, whimsical, childlike thing, but it has this attitude and edge to it. And Yeah, so then I kind of like distilled that to a sentence, and I said, we want the player to feel like they're in on it by hearing the music. The music should contain that depth of the characterization of the game. So what I mean by that is like, uh, there should be this kind of weird balance that you see in the visual of like, the teddy bear with the gun. Like that's kind of this like slightly jarring, like did they mean to do this type of visual? But then the music should kind of say, oh yeah, they meant to do this. And that's kind of that idea of reinforcement that I was talking about earlier, where like you are in service of the project as a whole, and you got to make sure that you're trying to sell the same thing they're trying to sell. And not that everything needs to be for dollars, but in terms of just like idea, you're trying to like push that forward and do it in the same way that they are. So then through conversations with the team, I ended up also kind of asking about the story that, like the narrative that was in the game, and came up with this sentence that basically the narrative is essentially you're a child's teddy bear, and effectively the teddy bear is fighting the child's like battles for them. So like whether it be, being nervous about something or being afraid of a bully or whatever, like it's the teddy bear who's fighting those battles in a kind of um, magical way. And so, yeah, I said the child's dreams help them unpack their real world experiences as a means to maintain a youthful and positive outlook to their otherwise concerning and difficult surroundings. So it ends up being a little heady, but I think in general, doing all that kind of work makes me go, okay, I understand what this project is about, and let me like try to write something for it. And so Chris is gonna hit play on what my initial little draft was. Yeah, and for anyone who can read music, they might realize that some stuff at the end there wasn't exactly what I had written, and even so, like the final version isn't exactly that either. But the goal was I want to get something that sounds childlike, sounds whimsical, sounds dreamlike. So it kind of has a little bit of like twists and turns. It also has a little reference to like a Brahms lullaby, so it sounds dreamlike. And yeah, I feel like that kind of contained that in some way that was working at that point. So it was, a good move to, get on to the next step of arranging it. Chris, if you want to hit the slide. So, yeah, the big question for the arrangement is what world does the core now live in? And it's kind of like it's almost like taking, a game concept and then putting artwork to it, establishing the kind of setting of what you want the core to be in. And so basically with those same words that I had before, like childlike and nostalgia and whimsical and all those types of things, it's like, well, how do I put that into like instrument terms now? And again, trying my best not to think about that before I actually make the little melody. But now that I have that, I can say, cool, well, that sounds like, like Sesame Street ad, like, kazoos, ukulele. I put jaw harp on here, but I didn't end up using it. Recorders I didn't end up using, but still like those kinds of ideas, and like xylophones and whatever, like those kind of um like toy instruments. And then the balance of that was putting like big rock instruments on it, like distorted guitar, synths, and then kind of more nostalgic things like chiptune. And so then I said to myself, the theme should serve as a marriage between child's innocence and Barry's perceived strength, can manifest as childlike music textures that get supported by bigger, louder sounds. So it's kind of that balance of the childlike stuff and the loud sounds. And yeah, you could play the final version of it as we have it.
I love that part though.
But yeah, let me know if there are any questions on that. I could answer them in the chat since we're running a little low on time. But yeah, that's basically the goal of keeping it streamlined but still creative.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'll talk real quick about code. So yeah, I'm again traditionally a software engineer, so I feel way more comfortable making fun of my own stuff here. There's a term in the software industry called spaghetti, where you have code that's just intertwined, and we are a small Italian bistro is another way I call our studio right now. But yeah, it's a lot of really small puzzles to solve. I think you're being really creative in a different way with code. You're trying to be more efficient with processing power. You're trying to figure out how to maximize platform support between PC, Linux, Xbox, things like that. And you're trying to think about building reusable tools in the future. That's the quick way. So for the last slide, though, I think is the most important is our community service engagement network.
Yeah, so community has been a really important part of our development process as far as like what reaching out to folks who are interested in the game, other developers, and really just like our network in the gaming industry. And all of this art is art that has been made by folks that we've met at conventions and online. And it's been really great to kind of get their support and their feedback in this project. So one big part of like building our community has been engagement, like I said, with gaming communities, and then also in our own local communities. So sometimes we'll find like colleges or events that they put on that we can get involved with and kind of share our project and our talents and resources to help other people access the ability to get involved if they feel like it as well. So we've got like social media, we've got a Discord where people can kind of connect with us and follow the work that we're doing, but then also ask questions if they have their own projects that they're working on. We want to be able to provide a fun and relatable experience for people to experience. So like at conventions, we really try to make a point to have conversations with everyone that stops by and really see what they feel about the game. Being able to share our talents and passions and interests is really important to us too, because I think a lot of this is part of like a human experience, even though it's all digital, finding a way to connect with each other. And then also strengthening our larger network, being able to support other developers, but then also in turn, they're able to kind of help us and connect us with other outlets that can help make our project successful. So doing things like talks like this or going to conventions, different schools, local events, that's all been a way for us to not just like market the game, but to really connect with our community and like I said, give them access to work on projects that they're interested in. I kind of flew through that, but if you are interested, we have like our QR code here that leads to the link tree, which you saw on the previous slide. We have our email up there, and we've got like a Discord. We really do chat with people that join our Discord community. People share like their own art and projects that they work on there too. So
cool. Yeah, so any questions? We're going to catch up on the chat here.
Thanks, Garrett, for responding. Yeah, part of the community connections too is just like hearing other people's experiences and sharing our own and being able to really learn and navigate like all of this unknown space and experience.
Yeah.
I think we're all just trying to figure it out to the best of our ability.
Well, let me quickly say brilliant. I was jotting down all of these questions, and by the end, you guys got them all almost, I think, on there. So many different elements and pro tips and in there of ways to think about the process. Thank you so much. It seems like you guys may have a couple more minutes if people do have questions. Do Chris,
Yeah.
April, Garrett? Okay, I do as
sure.
well. So I don't mind staying on if other folks do. If anybody has to jump off, I'll just say thanks for coming in, and while we're all together, thank you so much. Beautiful and amazing process. That said, yeah, anybody that's still in have questions that they want to ask for them? Is it going to be exclusively single player? Something asked.
Yeah, so that's speaking of learning process, we coded this just to be single player, and this and cosmetics have been the top requested item in RBA, and cosmetics was an easy implementation. Multiplayer and co-op would be very, very difficult for us to implement at this point. So we can't do that right now.
Steffi and Handy, Gustavo left, but feel free to tiene preguntas en español. It's okay.
Sí, no,
Chat.
no, que muchas gracias por el contenido y contarnos en esta pequeña capacitación como el hilo de del diseño. Me parece que estuvo muy bueno la secuencia de los personajes, del cómo fue el crecimiento del diseño del personaje y los colores que marcaron ustedes. Ay, por ahí es mucho, no sé si Gustavo quiere ayudarme. No
And
sé si se me...
can translate in the
¿Se
chat
hizo
too.
la
Put this.
traducción?
Here, and I'm gonna put a message in the chat for Steffi. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask too, Garrett and Chris and April, do you can you say anything about like that process of taking like strength with irony into like turning it into color and melody? How hard is that? And like, is there any like, did you guys find any social emotional communication tools to be able to process that conversion? Let's see.
Yeah, for the music, I think what I ended up leaning into, it does kind of just come down to the like instruments I used, because I mean you look at the like original melody that I've written and that idea isn't there. It like kind of that balance isn't like inherent to the melody itself, but so it is something that I only was able to tackle by having like kazoos on top of, you know, distorted guitar and like metal drums or whatever. Yeah, I kind of think that that's probably the only way I could have really gotten that done. But it is one of those things. I think there's like a film term called mise en scène, which means that like everything like in the scene matters. Like everything that's there, everything that's like happening at the same time is all like a specific detail that adds to the experience, and it's part of this very important sum. And I think that if I didn't try to do that in the music, then maybe it wouldn't have come across in other places of the game also. You know, it could have potentially, that it's, you know, whatever. It's just a speculation, but I think when everybody's on the same page about what's trying to be done, it makes it work a lot better. And so, yeah, I'm curious how you guys did it, Chris
Yeah.
and Mike.
Yeah, so for me, I think I've always loved contrast in media and in art, like the music I listen to, the jokes, like I don't know, just like anything that's presented in like a dry humor that's like really funny, or something that's like really over the top, vibrant, colorful, but it's like really talking about something really dark. That just like tends to be media I tend to be drawn to. So I feel like for me it was a fairly natural thing to be like, let's stick something cute like a teddy bear and then throw a gun on him and like have him wreak havoc and see what happens. Yeah, so for me, I feel like I've just kind of grown up with that, and like that's something that I love exploring. I love kind of telling stories that way, and giving off messages, I guess. Like what's the message that comes from this? So
Great.
cool.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Ciao.